I am better than you.
Oh yeah.
Cold breach 33.4. Cold breach.
Hello everyone. As you can see, I have Vital and Serum side by side. Vital, new synth, and I think it's safe to say that it's trying to be Serum 2.0. A lot of improvements over Serum. So in this video, I'm going to highlight those differences and new features. The first thing that caught my eye was Quantizer on oscillators. Very interesting feature. It's you can do a little bit of that modular thing of putting quantizer between LFO. So let me show you. Drag and drop, just like in Serum. You can do the same thing over here, by the way. Basic shapes, LFO, right? This is we would do the same thing in Serum. So in Vital, this is nothing new so far, but however, as soon as you turn this on, you have a quantizer for generative patches, just like in modular. Let's transpose it. By the way, transposition, holding shift, you get octave transposition. So yeah, this is very nice for quick arpeggios or some kind of special textures. What is interesting is that you know, if you take other sources, by the way, we have more random sources here compared to Serum. In Serum we have chaos oscillators, but here they are kind of they're deeper. Let's for now get simple sample and hold. So as you can see, there's just a lot of fun with having quantizers on board. And what is interesting about them is that you also can switch mode to global snap. So basically, this is now following just one key, no matter what you play. So for example, another feature that really caught my eye was, and this is really awesome. You see this little stereo fader. So just listen what happens when I move this. So as you can see, actually we don't have just one oscillator. There are two oscillators, left and right, and two envelopes right now. Sorry, two LFOs driving this oscillator, which is pretty wild. And the same thing you can do with sample and hold by pressing stereo. And finally, there's an interesting feature that allows you to do that stereo trick not only on LFOs, but pretty much every parameter you can spread stereo. So for example, we have a filter here. And if you drag this modifier, now I have stereo on this filter. Basically, this is dual filter right now. Really awesome. You can do it on waveforms, and now obviously this might be too much, right? If you think about right now, everything is hard panned. But again, we have a really nice feature here, spread, very quick access to, you can narrow it down a little bit. All right, so the third thing I really love about Vital is how it handles modulation routing. Now, Serum took the concept of drag and drop from massive. This way we can spend less time in matrix. Now, Vital took that and improved in, I believe, in significant ways. So let me show you a simple example. Let's say you have LFO 2 that you want to use on some random stuff here, and let's have some effects here as well. Notice that whenever I drop something on different pages, there is a color coding here, which eventually, if you have tons of modulation, might be very helpful. And those little circles always show you where modulation go from this particular modulation source. So I know that LFO2 is modulating 10 different things. I can quickly see, okay, is it modulating filter? I know the color of the filter is here. I can quickly find it. I can adjust it. And the same is true on the other end. Let's say you're working on this filter and you want to know, this mix, what is modulating that? And you see, okay, LFO2 is modulating that. And not only that, you can quickly adjust it. In Serum, you had that information here, but it's just information, and if you want to adjust it, you just have to go to LFO2 and adjust it like this. I really like it. And another feature I absolutely love is quick removal of those modulations. In Serum, you have quick bypass with a key shortcut. You can also right-click and remove. It's a bit clunky. Here, you just double-click on whatever you don't need, and very quickly you can declutter your modulation matrix. This way you can spend less time in actual matrix. And another thing that allows me to spend less time in modulation matrix is how it handles modulation amount and cross LFO modulation. So let me show you an example here. Let's get rid of those effects. So I have my little patch here. Let's drop a latch on this note. I'm lazy, as you can see. So let's say I have this LFO2. Let's synchronize it first. And let's say I'm dropping it on this filter cutoff frequency. Now, what if that little duck pattern, I want to come in and out, modulate it from LFO3. Now in Serum, I would have to go to LFO3 or LFO2 and say, probably no, I actually would have to go over here and use aux source. It's doable, but here it's way simpler. You just take this LFO3 and drag and drop on this little circle. It's so elegant, so simple. You can adjust the amount of that. And this way you don't even have to go to modulation matrix right now to adjust that. And another improvement, I was always hoping that Serum would have a quicker way to modulate parameters on one LFO with another. So for example, if I want to adjust speed of this LFO1, I have to right click, I have to choose LFO2. Again, not a big deal, but it's a bit clunky. Here I can simply drag and drop. Let's say I'm in LFO2, I have my frequency. Let's get rid of this modulation source for clarity. And so here I have this frequency, and I want to modulate it from this LFO3. Let's make it faster, by the way. So I just drag and drop over here. And adjust it, maybe. So, you know, everything is doable in Serum. It's just here, those little touches make it way more elegant and fun to work with. And again, double click, and I'm done with this modulation source. All right, so now let's talk about a new feature that I think it's way more than just quality of life. I think it's a game changer. I absolutely love it. And at first, it's called Mod Remap over here. At first, you might not really understand what's the big deal about it, but it opens up so many possibilities. So if you ever get to Vinyl, spend some time, you know, testing it and trying on different things. It's absolutely amazing. So how does it work? Well, let's get this filter modulation, and let's modulate it from envelope 2. And by the way, let me quickly mention a few little things. In Vinyl, you can click whatever you want on the screen, unlike in Serum, you have to really click that dot here. It's so much quicker to work with. You have extra delay, and by the way, you have 6 envelopes, not 3, when you expand all of them. So it's less claustrophobic than Serum in that regard. I really like that. So anyway, we have this traditional vintage sound, and in modulation matrix, this is listed as envelope 2 going to filter 1 cutoff. And here, this mod remap right now doesn't do anything. However, let's say I want this attack to be sharper, or modulate the curve over here. I can do it over here. Now it feels redundant at this point. However, it's not if you start doing some more interesting stuff with this. So let's say I want this to be a little bit more interesting attack phase, or more interesting envelope in general. Right, so you can create those kind of warbles on envelopes. So this is like the simplest example of how you can work with it. However, there are some crazy ideas you can try. For example, let's get it to mono. So we have this this LFO modulating pitch of our sine wave. Now, what if I do simple ramp up? And let's even get rid of that quantizer, so it's easier to see what we are going to do. Now this modulation is over here, right? This is LFO1 going to transpose oscillator 1. Now, if I, let's say, adjust this grid to 8 by 12, and this is, by the way, another little improvement over Serum. Serum only has XY grid locked, and I always wanted that feature XY separately. Well, why? Because if I do that, 8 by 12, let's say, no, this one, 8 by 12, suddenly I have a chromatic sequencer here if I adjust to just 12 steps. And let's get up with this one. Let's notch it. So now I can create so I have a sequence here that is run by this ramp up, which this ramp now becomes the phase of this the sequence. However, now I can fiddle with this LFO a little bit. Change the speed, or maybe even go through different, let's get even higher with this. You can now experiment with some interesting stuff. And you can also use it to create this little trick. If you create 4 points on 4x4, and while holding shift you can change a little bit that curve, you get a swing, right? So imagine now all the possibilities with remapping for more experimental patching. It becomes more like a mini modular in this case. Right, so let's clear this patch, and I want to talk about LFOs because they're really special compared to Serum. Similar, but they are basically audio rate capable. Now this is a big deal, and I'm going to show you a few examples where it plays a role. So for example, let's say I have 3x3, and this is, by the way, a little improvement here. You can have a triangular, not only half step, step and up and down. You know, in Serum you could choose, for example, ramp down, and with shift you can do this. Here you have a bunch of other shapes, and it's a really great thing because if you switch this curve mode, you know, it's a very quick way of getting sine waves, right, into your oscillator. Multiple. So for example, I could do something like this and have 32 of them. Now here is the crazy part, which is if you switch to seconds, you can go down with the oscillator speed to 1 millisecond. Now the lowest in Serum is 100 hertz, which means it's 10 milliseconds, right? So right off the bat you have this LFO goes 10 times higher into audio rate to effectively 1 kilohertz. However, with this quick sine wave right now, think about it, now we are at 22 kilohertz, so it's above what we can hear. So technically we can have full audio range spectrum here. And if we modulate, we can modulate whatever we want. Let's obviously I couldn't stop myself, right? And again, very quick from LFO2. Now, so this is one example. Another one is, instead of the filter, we could go to, let's say, we could modulate pitch. And that's very interesting because technically it's frequency modulation, but it's not linear, it's exponential. So this is the FM that you find in all synthesizers and in most Eurorack modules. It is kind of inharmonic. And by the way, in Vital you still have FM, just a traditional linear FM. But because this oscillator is audio rate, you can actually do second type of FM over here. And now is the big, I want to show you the big one. So let's get rid of this modulation and let's talk about phase modulation. So we had, right now we modulated FM on filter, we modulated FM exponentially on the oscillator. Now over here, just like in Serum, you have control over phase. However, if you try doing this in Serum, at some point it doesn't do the trick. Well, Vital is actually built to be able to do phase modulation here. So let's try that. It's crazy. We have phase modulation from LFO. Now you might think, okay, so now it's kind of, we're bending backwards right now just to get this phase modulation that is available in DX7, for example. And you know, we always have to match this frequency. Well, guess what? This LFO has a key tracking mode, which is absolutely fantastic. Look at this. And by the way, in this case, I probably have to clear this. Yeah, now it's better. So now I can assign this envelope 2 Isn't it crazy? For those of you who are into deep house, so yeah, we have phase modulation from LFO, and just let's pause for a second. Now this LFO becomes an operator, and this oscillator becomes another operator. Just like in Yamaha DX7, we have phase modulation inside. And so what's the big deal? Well, in order to do the same thing in Serum, you would have to get this oscillator B modulating oscillator A, so let's say FM. Normally you probably would reduce this level to 0, and you have equivalent of what we just tried to do here, except now we not only used except now we already don't have oscillator B. So that's the big deal here, that right now I can only use with oscillator A if I want to have FM. Moreover, I do not have any other modes, access to any other bending modes. Now in Vital, not only I did not use any other oscillators, and we have 2 other full oscillators, not just sub and oscillator A, just 2 other oscillators. So not only that, but I still have access to all goodies from, you know, bending and stuff like that, shaping, plus spectral mode that I will talk about later. I think this is pretty stunning. Now we talk about LFO, so let's talk about oscillators. So let's initialize, start clean, fresh. So obviously it's a wavetable synthesizer, so we have to look at what is different in terms of waveform editing, right? In Serum we had this elaborate editor, really good, by the way. So the question is, how can we improve here? And at first, when you open it, you might be a little bit like intimidated, or it feels off at first. And I had this first impression, it's like, I'm not sure if I like it. But then it's actually pretty amazing. So what you want to do, so we have we have this saw. What you want to do is, I strongly advise you to just start remove this group and start from clean slate to learn this. So the concept here is you're adding sources first. So let's add wave source, leave line for now. If you're from Serum, just line might throw you off at first. Remove this grid to 0, and then draw whatever the hell you want. Now, the way it works here is it's a beautiful solution. It's a keyframing. So if you're in graphic design, let's say Adobe After Effects, you will be very familiar into that. I'm creating now second keyframe, and I'm drawing something else. Now, everything in between will be automatically morphed. And you also have different modes, waveform blend or spectral. In Serum, you basically had to create those waveforms and go, you know, menu diving, and there's some really nice features here. But I have to say that this version, this Vital solution, I really like it. It's very kind of direct and fun to work with. Moreover, you can now add non-destructive modifiers. So let's say, let's clear this out. Let's say I'm starting from sine wave, and by the way, we also have spectral editing here. So I'm just, you know, you can do everything just like in Serum. But let's add modifier, wave folder. So I'm saying, okay, at the beginning, this wave folder will be turned off. But as we move towards the other side, I'm going to add another keyframe on this modifier. So my waveform is still moving on its own, but now I'm adding wave folding here on top of that. And now I can, you know, adjust where it should happen. Maybe I can see if there is anything else, like, I don't know, maybe at some point I want to cut some frequencies spectrally. And over here we're gonna open it. And then you say, okay, I don't like it. Okay, let's just remove it. Moreover, you can have more wave sources here. For example, I could now try this line source that allows me to create those waveforms in a different way. And notice that they're now blended together. Let's draw something else here. So you can see that now I have mix of both, and by the way, I can also add audio file source. You can stack different sources and just build your waveform. For example, you might say, okay, I don't want to destroy what I have, but maybe at some point I would like to have a bit of extra glitches. And maybe here it will be too much, so I'm going to clear it. So you can see those glitches right now are showing up here. And later I'll decide if I want them or not. I think it's really awesome. This editor is really fantastic. And there's also a new feature in Vital when it comes to oscillators. It's called Spectral Morph. In Serum, we had this thing called Warp, which allows you to, let's say, bend your waveforms or do PWM. It's called Warp here, and in Vital it's called Wave Morph. And you have similar options here. You can modify that waveform. Now notice that there's an extra fader here, so you have actually two ways to modify that particular algorithm. So it's slightly less of them, but you can still do a lot with this waveform. Sorry, with this wave morph warping, right? However, next to it we have spectral morph. So let's get rid of this. So let's try one of them and see what happens. So you might say, okay, what's going on here? And in order to understand what is going on, you should probably switch display mode. So just like in Serum, you just click and see different. You have only two display forms here. Here you can also do 2D, 3D, and if you click again, you have SP, which is basically a spectrum. It's a bit misleading because it doesn't look like spectrum, but if you just imagine that these are low frequencies, these are high. Basically it's a display of bins, spectral bins. So this is probably the easiest to understand. This low pass, if you see it on the waveform, it will look like this, but this is what you should be really looking at when you're working with it. So whenever you're working with with wave morph, you have the traditional view. Whenever you're working with spectral morph, change to SP to see what's going on. And there are a bunch of these algorithms. For example, in harmonic stretch, you can see that higher overtones here are going up. Let's actually listen to some of them. Random amplitudes. So this I think illustrates the best is that random frequencies, or those bins, overtones, are being amplified randomly. So before we wrap it up, I want to mention a few things. I'm not going over waveforms and presets. That should be completely different comparison in depth. And I'm also not going to go over comparing effects between Serum and Vital. Everything is here. OTT is here, so relax, it's here. And it's even easier to access because in Serum you have to switch to multi-band, so it's too much work. Here we have OTT by default. Now all other effects are there, except you might miss hyperdimension. However, you can mimic it or do very close kind of sound with chorus. So you just have to test it and see if you like it. There are some really cool advanced options here with unison. Whenever unison is active, you actually have a lot of different options for spreading, and it's more visual. It's a really nice nice synth. As you can see, it's very similar to Serum with just more features. And there's one feature, and this is elephant in the room here, and I need to talk about it, which is text to wavetable. Now, some of you might say it's cheesy, and maybe I shouldn't even talk about it, but I think it's kind of funny that we can do it in Vital pretty well. So let me show you. There's a hidden feature here in Serum that allows you to do text to speech, which is over here. Normally, this window is for entering formulas. For example, you can say, you can have a specific waveform you want to create, and you have, right? Now, let's say you want to rectify it. You expand your math equation, and here we go, rectify sine wave. However, in the same window, if you're in the same type, it's called text box, right? In the same place, if you type something with quotation marks, let's say test, testing. So what this is supposed to be is now a waveform of synthesized speech. So if we get envelope mode here, I mean, it kind of is, like you can say it's testing, but it's more like an experimental hidden feature. Now, in Vital, we actually have a feature that it's part of the marketing here, text to wavetable, and you can write, and we get a waveform, right? So let's hear.
Testing. Yes, testing.
So you can see it's a very different quality. Obviously, the thing with the text to speech in Vital is that this is actually an online service. You have to be connected to internet when you type in. But you can see that it's actually usable. So let's try something else.
Reached oxygen level 33. Breached oxygen level 33.
Breached oxygen level 33.0.4.
Hull breached oxygen level 33.4%. Hull breached oxygen level 33.4%.
Hull breached oxygen level 33.4%. Hull breached oxygen level 33.4%. Hull breached oxygen level 33.4%. Hull breached oxygen level 33.4%. Breached oxygen level 33.4%. Hull breached oxygen level 33.4%. Hull breached oxygen level 33. Hull breach 33.4%.
Hull breach 33.4%. Hull breach.
Hull breach 33.4%.
Hull breach 33.4%. Hull breach. Hull breach 33.4%. Hull breach. Hull breach 33.4%.